Welcome to the Creative Condition podcast, an ongoing series of conversations and considerations to help people understand and embrace their own unique creativity for fulfilling lives and brilliant careers. My name is Ben Talon. I'm an illustrator and author, and I bring 16 years of creative industry experience working with the New York Times, The Guardian, the Premier League, and more. And I invite designers, artists, psychologists, scientists, coaches, athletes, sensitivity experts, and all kinds of thought leaders to help us broaden our knowledge of creativity. Creativity is a fundamental pillar of human happiness, a vital ingredient in the solutions to our problems, but so often misunderstood. The show is supported by founding sponsor and B Corp, Illustration X. Take a look at their stunning range of illustrators and animators at illustrationx.com. If you like the music for the show, it's by Dirty Freud, who you can listen to now on Spotify and all good music streaming services.
The 50-minute city, the polycentric proximity, has in the DNA this way to kindness, otherness, in a collective way with the individual differences, with the important social acceptability, to develop a new economic model, no more based in the economical performance, but in the added value, in the social added value.
Today I'm joined by the 15-minute city and smart cities pioneer, Professor Carlos Moreno. Following the release of his recent book, The 15-Minute City, which blew my mind and raised so many valid issues surrounding creativity, community, people-centric cities over cars, we're getting into all of those themes about wellness, well-being, family time, creativity, what we should have learned from the pandemic, what we didn't learn, and how we have to start to address that. This is the Creative Condition. How are you doing, guys? I hope you're well. Welcome back to the show. This is the Creative Condition. I am your host, Ben Talon. How have you been? I hope you're well. Thank you for recent feedback on Erin Riley, incoming global CEO of TBWA. That was a beast of an episode. Erin absolutely inspired and wowed me with her wonderful articulation of many of the industry's ills today, the asphyxiating effect of data and hyper-paranoia on creativity, particularly in the likes of the branding world and the advertising world, and how we start to address that. Sarah Prinsloo recently, also great numbers, great response too, with continuing the conversation about working class and about the class ceiling and how that impacts creativity and what we lose from not having a broader spread of people from different backgrounds in the industry. So go back and check those out if you haven't listened yet. But the feedback's been wonderful. The numbers have been on the rise. People have been in touch. The Anatomy of Creativity map has been trickling out. Thank you for those orders. Thank you for the book bundle orders too. It's lovely to have the personal dialogue with my customers as an author. Something you get from the independent model, having done this through Kickstarter. So they're all still available at bentalonwriter.com/shop. Don't forget to check out the sponsors of the show. Founding sponsor, Illustration X. Head over to just illustrationx.com. I'm so used to rolling out the slash on my URL that I'm popping it on everyone else's now. Also, check out the Ukrainian Institute. They're doing wonderful work to support the brave Ukrainian community during this horrific time of war. So don't forget to have a look over there too. What have you been up to? I have been, well, it's been quite quiet on the commissioned illustration front, which has given me the time to really start to soft launch my coaching program. So that's exciting. It's also slightly nerve-wracking because, well, you guys know it well. The guilt and the financial paranoia that comes when things get quiet is very real. So it's a constant battle to fight to stave that off and stay productive in the downtime, because when it turns the corner, like it always tends to do, even though you feel like it's never going to do it again, of course, then you thank yourself for spending that time productively and wisely and really driving down on that emotional creativity. So I've had a couple of pilot sessions recently for my Pit Stop, which is a one-to-one intensive creativity audit The first one took about just over 3 hours of conversation. You might have seen I posted about that with the wonderful Ryan Lewis, who's a motion designer and animator, but also designer. He's a very talented guy over in California. Did work for Apple and Google before getting out of the kind of big tech world, and now he's trying to pick up his thread again. So he got in touch through the podcast when I mentioned the coaching. So I said, look, I'm getting this thing off the ground right now. I'm doing a few pilot sessions. How about we do it? Because I don't really know you at all. We've had a bit of conversation surrounding the podcast over Instagram, and he came to see Stefan Sagmeister and I live at Off Festival. But I thought it would be a great case study for me because it gives me the impartiality of working with someone who I haven't met yet, as opposed to leaning on friends when I already know them and there's biases and everything else. And we talked for about 3.5 hours, which we both admitted was a little intense on the other side of it, and that I might, if it was to go that long next time, split it into 2 sessions. But whether it's 1 or 2 sessions, it's coming in at around 2.5 to 3 hours of intensive, very honest, cards on the table discussion about frustrations, about current direction, about dreams, hopes, fears, but also the nitty gritty. So I dig deep into all the themes that are on this anatomy of creativity map, including environment, background, and relationship with nature. And we really get into the weeds on this stuff and really paint a broad picture. And then I go away and I listen back to the conversation and I work through it. And I write up my recommendations by referring to my framework and the map, and go back with, for Ryan, what amounted to about 10 pages of notes and exercises. And it felt great because it's helping people direct, one-to-one. You get the thanks, you get the relationship, you get the open dialogue, and I really, really love it. Now, I absolutely still adore being an illustrator. I still feel very lucky to be doing the job. We'll be doing it in some capacity for the rest of my days because it's a craft that I've come to really cherish. But what I don't like about that side of the industry is my detachment from the bigger creative picture. I'm talking about the art direction and the ideas in an agency. And by the time they come to me, it tends to be that they've got an idea of what they want. And I'm this sort of mercenary who can carry out the art on the outside. Now, don't get me wrong, there's many upsides to that. I get the freedom and flexibility of sitting here in the studio of mine in the garden and listening to music that I want, watching films while I work. I have all those little luxuries. I get to go and do my kids' school run and everything else. So many, many blessings there. Very appreciative. However, this coaching stuff is just activating me on a personal level, on an empathetic, highly sensitive person level, where I get to see in real time the person that I'm helping. I get to see the improvement and elevation of a person's creativity, which feeds into a more fulfilling life. And I'll tell you what, it feels awesome. I did the second one last night. Equally brilliant. I knew the person I did the pilot with a little better this time. Not to the point where it was going to get in the way of the session, but again, we got deep. It was about 2 hours this time. So it varies in time scale, but that is a thing that's available now, the pit stop. And I am running introductory level rates. So if that sounds good for you, if you could do with an intensive session just to realign you and course correct and get you back on the optimal path, then let's have a conversation. Get in touch. We'll jump on Zoom. We'll chat it through. And if it feels right, if you feel like there's a chemistry, then we'll work together. I'm also offering the workshop at the moment called Session. I did it for DNAD New Blood Academy the other week, and it went down a storm. I got a lot of the students messaging me afterwards saying, what value they got from it and which bits really spoke to them. And again, it's working with that overall big picture of creativity and helping people to understand and embrace it. And in this regard, it's kind of a workshop format. So I'll do the talk, take people through the anatomy of creativity. Then we have a bit of a Q&A after a break. And then maybe we do some exercises so I can come into your workplace and do it. And I can guarantee you it will elevate the creativity and the understanding of creativity and its value and how to tap into theirs of your staff. So give me a shout. The website is going to be coming before too long, but at the moment I've got these lovely designed PDFs that's got all the information. We'll get them out there, we'll have a conversation, and we'll see if we can get some bookings. So let me know if that is of interest to you. That is a big initiative of mine right now. But that's enough about me. Let's get into Carlos Moreno, today's guest, and why I wanted to have this conversation. So, I've got his book in hand right here. So the 15-minute city concept, let's talk about that first. You might remember the I want to say controversy, but I don't know if I want to give it that much credit. But recently there was a lot of kind of conspiracy hullabaloo around, ex-footballers going on the march about we don't want to be locked in our cities and all this stuff. And maybe there's some things to explore there, some concerns that we need to check in terms of who is pushing this and what does it mean and how do we do it in a way that doesn't trample on liberties. So I do get the concerns. I'm not going to sort of go after those people. But I do think there's so much fear since the pandemic, and I do think that we have to be careful because we are in a really precarious, unprecedented position with the climate crisis where we have to act urgent. And I don't think you can argue against it anymore. The science is so conclusive and so unanimous. And even without the science, when you walk out that door, you walk out there in the trees and there's that lashing rain and you just see that the day-to-day changes in temperature, the dips and the raises and the sea level temperatures, it's all screaming in our face that we are doing this wrong. We have to reconsider our land use, how we are using, fossil fuels and everything else. And we've known this for a long time, but there's very much head in the sand going on because it's a very big issue for us to consider. But when I read Carlos's book, The 15-Minute City, I was quite wowed because this just sings to me on a human-centric community level. Now, anybody who's listened to this show for a while will know that I care deeply about well-being and mental health and the emotional benefits of creativity and artistic expression. And there's so many things about Carlos's work and the things that he goes in depth with in this book about, redesigning cities so that they get back to what they were before Henry Ford and the Ford Motor Company pushed cars on us as this symbol of independence and built freeways that smashed up neighbourhoods and ruined communities and turned our cities into groaning, emission-filled slogs of commutes and lack of green spaces and everything else. And it's there for all of us to see, Anyone who's sat in a car on the Manchester ring roads at tea time will tell you that. I had my fair share of that. And you smell the fumes. It's there. It's soul destroying. There's no greenery. And it's going against our relationship with nature. I could waffle all day, but the book filled me with optimism. It filled me with hope. And I was a little befuddled, I must admit, by some of the kind of, ideas of conspiracy and New World Order and all this stuff. And I genuinely believe that as far as Professor Carlos Moreno is going and his ideas and his concepts, that it's right on. I think it's spot on. Yeah, read the book yourself. Give me your thoughts. Happy to have a conversation about that. But I wanted to chat to the man himself and discuss a lot of the themes in his book because I think there's so much that is relevant to creativity in terms of bringing people together and overcoming the class divide that has been discussed in recent episodes on this podcast with Professor Carl Chin and with Sarah Prinsloo, 239 and 241 respectively, episodes on the show if you want to go back and listen. And just enabling communities and supporting people who need it more in a way that is holistic, that helps all of us, that brings us together and gives us fulfillment and purpose and belonging. So about Professor Carlos Moreno, from the biography in his book. Here we go, let's have a look. Carlos Moreno is an associate professor at the Paris IAE Pantheon-Sorbonne University in France and the co-founder and scientific director of the Entrepreneurship Territory Innovation Chair. He is a pioneer in intelligent cities and a globally recognised specialist in the intelligent control of complex systems. He is passionate about bringing together scientific disciplines and professionals in the innovation ecosystem. It's a wonderful book, so do check it out. Carlos, wonderful English speaker. At times when I was recording the show, there was just a little bit, because of just a sheer scientific language and things going on, that just left me a bit floundering. So if that's the case for you, there is going to be the highlights edition also. But to be quite honest, his English is better than mine for the most part. So there you go. If you can understand me, you'll be all right with Carlos. So cheers for checking in, guys. I hope you enjoy this one. Again, something a little different. I'm going far and wide this year in my exploration of creativity. I've seen Athena Actopus has been posting a lot recently. That was an episode we did about apocalypses and humans in times of crisis. It's a very interesting one, and it kind of feeds into some of the themes Carlos talks about today. So go back and listen to that one on episode 219. Awesome episodes coming up. Miss Led is coming back to the show. We've got Synoptic Office coming back, Casper and Eugene, who run that studio, doing awesome work with archives around gallery spaces and museums. Really, really interesting stuff. We've got all sorts going on the show as ever. So thank you for listening. If you get a chance, please do rate, review, subscribe. It massively helps the show that I do all of this myself. The only support I get is from Illustration X, who kind of share my posts and help by supporting the show to cover costs. But ultimately, this is on me. I put so much time into this exploration of creativity, which has become my life's cause. If you would like to support, please do go and just leave a little review or a subscription. That's how you can help me the most until I set up a Patreon, of course, which I am thinking about. Like I said, the coaching is off the ground. Give me a shout if you're interested in the workshop or the coaching intensive pit stop session. That's enough from me. Cheers, guys. Enjoy this conversation with Professor Carlos Moreno. First of all, I'm interested in your title, your current role, specialist in intelligent control of complex systems. Tell me about that role.
Yes, in fact, I am neither urbanist nor architect. My first discipline is mathematics and computer science. In this way, I was professor and researcher for using mathematics and computer science for exploring the presence of multiple systems in the mechatronic way, robotics, the uses of algorithms with electronic for managing infrastructures. For a long time, I have used this discipline, mathematics, computer science, and electronics, for managing, for example, the nuclear power plants or the first generation of drones. And I have started to work in cities by the angle of optimization of infrastructures, lamp post, street lighting, traffic with using technologies, smart red lightings, control of sewages, water, electricity, power, etc. And the intelligent control of complex systems is, in fact, to take the different system present with electronics, algorithm, mechanics, different uses for optimizing with sensors and actuators the use of this kind of elements. In cities, I was one of pioneers in the way of a smart city, because the smart city, after the emergence of internet in 2000, was in a way for using data science, electronics, computer science, and mathematics for managing different streams in cities. And I have developed with my team one of the first smart control room for cities, the big rooms for managing by remote technologies different services in cities, traffic jams, street lighting, etc. And I developed with my team one of the first technologies based on the smart control rooms. This was the idea. The intelligent complex system is, in fact, to consider different interdependencies between different elements in a city, and to use algorithms, electronics, sensors, actuators for optimizing. But in 2000, after the internet, we were among the pioneers until 2010, when this was a big business of big companies for developing the smart technological solutions And I considered at this moment that the promise for solving the complex problem in cities, that climate change, poverty, social exclusion, is not a question of technology. Even if we have a really powerful technological development. But this is not enough to have algorithms and the technocentered ways. And I prefer to switch from this smart technological solutions towards, in my opinion, the most important point, to develop more and more design of services. How could we improve the quality of life of citizen dwellers in the cities? No longer by more and more powerful infrastructures, but to provide more and more local services for offering a real best quality of life. This was the turning point in 2010 for living from the smart technological city towards a more human smart city at the beginning, more living city after, and to evolve for proposing this polycentric city with the 50-minute city. This was 10 years for switching from the technological, intelligent, complex systems towards a more humanistic urban development.
But your book is wonderful, by the way. It's, I spent the whole reading every page, nodding, and it filled me with optimism and excitement. And I speak as somebody who I've spent my life with social relationships, positive social relationships, and community at the very top of what gives me joy. Be that friendship circles, be that the creative community in my industry. And it's when I'm immersed in those cultures that I am most alive in terms of ideas generation, the necessary human interaction that we all must have, because we evolved in small tribes and groups. And I think that we lose something when, as you have very well highlighted, we have to commute long distances, when cities are designed around motor transport and not human values. And of course, you mentioned at the start the climate crisis, where this is an urgent, we're faced with our own mortality here. And I think that on that on that level, that's obviously critical in your proposition. Is that right?
Yes, of course. When I have decided to turn toward this humanistic urban development, at the same time, in 2010, the Professor Mohamed Yunus, the Nobel Prize, published a book, A World of Triple Zero: Zero Carbon, Zero Poverty, Zero Exclusion. In 2010, very relevant event, given that Professor Yunus was one of the most committed Nobel Prizes for fighting against social exclusions, for developing the new kind of social interactions, for developing more local economical activities. He was the creator of the Grameen Bank, the bank of microcredit, for fostering people with just a few dollars, for going in the way, for creating a economical activity, for going more than assistance to the created added value. And I was totally convinced when I read this book that for cities, We need essentially to develop more local services, of course, for developing more social interactions, for having more vibrant neighborhoods, for developing more friendships, relations, for developing more intergenerational activities, gender equity, etc. This is the social aspect. Of course, I was convinced for a long time that we need to reduce our CO2 footprint, given that in the Anthropocene era, we are the most important contributors of CO2 emissions by our lifestyle in cities, and this massive presence of the increase of the CO2 is at the origin of this outstanding risk, not only for cities, but for humanity, with the systemic impact of climate change, loss of biodiversity, rise of sea levels, the heat waves in cities, etc. This is the ecological question. But we need as well, we said, to regenerate our local economy, to generate more employment, more local activities, to use raw materials, to develop more traditional knowledge in our cities, to stop this globalization for continuing to import manufactured products without the real concrete local added value. And I said, in fact, that when I proposed after the COP21 in 2016, the COP21 in Paris was in 2015. This was the moment of the signature of the Paris Agreement. I said in 2016 that, in fact, we need three convergent aspects to reduce our CO2 footprint in a more ecological way for having livable cities, to develop a more humanistic social interactions for fighting against social exclusion and to have more vibrant neighborhoods. But first one, we need as well to develop a more vibrant local economy, local employment for having more viable cities, livable cities in the ecological way, more inclusive cities in the social positive impact way, a more viable economical cities. Proximity was, at this moment, my common point for developing this convergence, to reduce our CO2 footprint naturally when we have the possibility to access to more local services on foot or by bike, for example. In this case, we don't need to use a car. Secondly, with the more vibrant neighborhood, we could create these more friendly relationships, more social interactions in proximity, in particular, to use a public space for people in off-road cars, to develop more green areas, to develop more cultural interactions, to develop a new urban culture. And at the same time, to develop more local shops, local commerce, more short circuits, urban agriculture, for developing more intensive uses of infrastructures for creating more added value. This was in reality the framework that I have used to propose in 2016 for the first time this concept, 15-minute city. In reality, the number of minutes, 15, is not important. The most important point is to develop this polycentric city. Jean Jacobs said a city is alive when, anytime, anywhere, we have a multiplicity of choices without having a car dependency. In fact, this is in the 21st century, the Jane Jacobs idea, anytime, anywhere, a multiplicity of choices without a car dependency for reducing our CO2 footprint, lot of services for more social interactions, a more vibrant economy because we have the possibility to create a more added value, employment, and more important social cohesion. I think that this is in reality the strong point, really social cohesion.
Well, yeah, I believe that everything hinges on unity and community voice, and I see now. I noticed, in France recently, the rise of right wing politics. We've had the same thing here in the UK, and I believe that this is a voice of disaffection, of people who do not get the chance to coexist and hear the stories of other people that are different to them. And you mentioned, in the book, the importance of bringing together people from different class backgrounds, because I think this is crucial. I'm from a working class background, and I've been fortunate enough to have a 16-year career as an illustrator and a writer in the creative industries, but this is not common, and most people from my background don't even encounter the creative industry. And what happens is those people feel disillusioned and exist in bubbles. And I think there's no coincidence that with the rise of CO2, there's also the rise of the mental health crisis, the rise of online interactions. I think we need to step back and recognize where we came from. And I think that in this polycentric cities, it fills me with wonder to imagine being back, at a market square. And I love where you mentioned this, leaving the schools open on the weekends for people to come together. I see so many lonely people who, when you think of the rise of the speed of technology, that's going to alienate people who are maybe too old to have used that technology. And so they're walking around the streets alone, and there are people walking around lost in their mobile phones, and there's just so much divide among people. And I just think that the noise of the world is too much. So I think that bringing together people from different backgrounds so they can interact face to face will help to stop this rise of right-wing politics and disaffection. Is that something you also believe?
Yes, you're right, totally right. Reality, we want to, with the 50-minute city, with the 30-minute territory, with the X-minute city, with this polycentric city. I said very often, we have used to live in a illusory bubble. We have accepted for a long time different bubbles. The bubble of the digital social networks, for example, with a lot of anonymous people, haters, and totally disconnected of the concrete reality. I said that for the first time in the history of humanity, we are massively connected, and at the same time, we are massively social disconnected. We want for that to create in the real life the very concrete social interaction. And at the same time, we have other kinds of illusory bubbles. The modern urbanism, for more than 7 decades, has generated very important segregations. We have accepted to live in a fragmented city. For example, in the modern urbanism, the normality was to have the corporate business district as the essential point for working with the long distances of the residential areas. We have accepted to have this artificial separation based on a on a business model. The business model of the real estaters was to continue to build massively, for example, the corporate business district, often so far, and with the residential areas, the consequence was this expressway, motor highways, the presence of massive individual cars, the traffic jams, the daily traffic jams, the peak hours, and even including by public mass transportation, because the question is the reason all people should go at the same time in the same slice time from home to a job. I said in my book that we have accepted to live in a city as a giant metronome, early in the morning, early in the evening, disconnected. And this massive fragmentation was at the same time caused by a massive gentrification. We have the lot of residential areas with the most important services, but at the same time expensive for renting or expensive for buying. We have observed this fragmentation with the different social categories, rich districts, middle class districts, working class, poor district, immigration, etc. In reality, we have accepted this inacceptable question to live with a strong segmentation, strong separation. With the 50-minute city, we wanted to foster against these economic inequities based on the big differences that people who live in a same city, and on the other hand, to fight against the new two modernist inequities, the spatial injustice, people that live so far with the long time spent for commute, and the second, temporal injustice, people that the essential of their daily time is only for commuting, for going from a home to a job, without the possibility for having useful time for each one of us, for our family, for having the friendly relationships in the neighborhoods, for developing more social and more natural relations with public spaces, etc. Fighting against inequities and the spatial and temporal injustice are at the core of these proposals for developing a massive mixed city. You are totally right. We have the different backgrounds isolated and separate. We need to develop a more massive social mixity, a more massive functional mixity for breaking out this city segregated, fragmented, fractured.
And how do we challenge, so that the automotive industry was a key player in the way that our cities were developed after the war, after the Second World War, to promote mobility and the use of cars. Cars have not gone away. So how do we find a collective voice that because I worry that this will be opposed by the same industries that created the problem in the first place. How do we bring them on board? How do we get past that problem?
Yeah. The development of modern cities at the beginning of the last century, at the beginning of 20th century, was totally intertwined with the emergence of the zonified place for working, for living, and the massive emergence of individual cars. In 1913, when Mr. Henry Ford produced the first Model T of cars, this was the spark for shaping our cities, no longer by the accessibility to the service, but the presence of the materials, three modern materials: concrete and cement for building this separation between the functions incorporated within these residential areas. The second one, cars. At this moment, metals, cars, and oil as the main source. In Europe, after the Second War, we have embraced this model. The Athens chart was the predominant model for developing our cities in all Europe and after in all continents. The classical shape of cities with the skyline of the corporate districts, there's amazing infrastructures, expressway, bridges, and the massive presence of cars, the parking in surface, etc., were the strong presence of this paradigm, and the consequence was this loss of humanity in our cities, in our neighborhood. For example, a lot of neighborhood were transformed and just sleeping dormitories, just places for sleeping, and in permanence, people should have this hectic life early in the morning for working, to arrive late in the evening. And the massive presence of cars, in reality, was more important than just a vehicle for moving. The cars, in fact, were become a social status. Cars were the social hierarchical level. If I have a car, I have a social status. My car is a big car, it's a black car. I am an important person. Cities became as well gendered, essentially for men. Cars were at the same time a symbol of a strong masculinity. Cars were at the same time an element of desire. I have a car, I am a man, I have a job. This was an element for continuing to gender a masculine city. We have accepted that for a long time. The turning point, in fact, has arrived in the 21st century, when, on the one hand, we needed to understand that we have been living in an unsustainable world, given that we have the unsustainable cities, and in our cities, we live with the unsustainable lives. And it is totally necessary to change in face with the question of global warming, the social tensions, by the social exclusion present in our cities, and the presence of a lot of poverty. However, you're totally right, Ben, because the question of the individual car is really always present, even with people that consider that we need to change the shape of cities by the presence of more and more services. If we want to reduce the role of individual cars, they are totally opposed, because for them, a car is a synonymous of freedom. A car is a synonymous of civic rights. A car is really compulsory to have it, to use in all circumstances in my city. I think that in the 21st century, this is a real strategic point to act for changing our mindset in order to consider that it is totally necessary to break out our car dependency. And this is a real challenge. I observed that when I suffered the backslash in UK by the people that consider a car should be present in permanence in a city. And the reality is that with our cities, became the cities with a so high density, a car is no longer necessary in places with a high density. We need to switch towards capability by capability mass transportation. But this question to consider that a car is no more necessary is today a strong point in the mindset of a lot of people. And unfortunately, this is the really confrontation point.
Yes, it's a very difficult. I mean, we're talking about a century of very consciously embedded, mindsets, aren't we? Through marketing and through vested interest, and it's very hard to unpick something that is just so second nature now. Even when we see the effects in our day-to-day lives, whether we're aware consciously of this or not, when you feel the heat, when you see the heavier rain, and it's right there in front of us, but very hard to break these kind of habits. But I come from the perspective of my life's cause has become champion in helping people to understand the value of creativity and the necessity of creativity in our lives for magic, for feeling of belonging, and for self-expression. And that happens the most when people come together. I tell this all the time to people who have maybe since COVID have remained isolated and stayed indoors, and it goes hand in hand with a global mental health crisis. And just recently I've started looking into the concept of evolutionary mismatch, so looking at the way that our brains and bodies and our lifestyles evolved from being in tribes to the way that we live now. And there are many, many great uses of technology, but I think that staying indoors alone is not one of them. And I think that we have to, every time that I spend too much time in isolation and I feel down, or I overthink, because I have a curious mind, so I do. Whenever I remedy that and I go out and I see people walking the dogs, or I see people in the town hall square, I immediately feel better. It aligns with something completely necessary inside of me. So what value in your concept of the 15-minute city does creativity have? Would you agree that it is absolutely vital to solve these collective problems, to find collective voice?
Yes. The COVID-19 was another turning point, given that, on the one hand, for the first time in the modern humanity, we had this planetary pandemic with the same consequences in our cities. This strong isolation, people was blocked by the lockdown, was the only way for limiting the spread of this virus. And the other hand, a lot of people should be changed quickly lifestyle. A lot of people have learned to use technologies for working, for example. At the same time, people have discovered more familiar relationships. People discovered at the same time the existence of neighbor, a local sociability has an effect for saying maybe it is possible to take our time, not only for commuting, for working, but to develop, to reviving our social links. After the COVID-19, in particular for young people, young workers between 20 years old until 40 years old, this stage of the lifestyle and work style have been continuing to be present in a lot of cities around the world. This is the case in Paris, for example. The corporate district have totally lost the employees in the present. Even the business model of these business districts is today a risk because the workers have preferred today to take 2 days per week for a remote job instead of to go 5 days to a physical presence. With the 15-minute city, we had this possibility for proposing a radical change of our cities, no more based in infrastructure, but based in a new social interactions model, a new local economical model. We have, with this polycentric model, the possibility for offering more local services. The idea, for example, to open schools during the weekend. This is an idea for using a public space in permanence, in that this surface closed during the weekend. This is a classical use of the incomplete places. When we have proposed to open the school during the weekend, this is a possibility for offering a creative way. The question is not only to open these surfaces. The question is to say to the different to neighbors, do you have this new public space? Please submit proposals for using differently that a school. A lot of people have proposed different cultural activities, artistic activities, sport activities, food activities, etc. And we said, okay, this is a surface inside the school. In front of a school, we have a street. this street is dedicated for cars. We will transform as well this street in front of the school, no more for cars, but as a mini park for promoting different activities. This was the decision took in Paris by the mayor Anne Hidalgo to transform not only the surface inside the school for opening during the weekend, but to transform the totality of a street in front of schools. 280 schools, 280 streets for cars that became now 200 streets for activities. Playground for kids, vegetalization, etc. And you're right, this is an amazing opportunity for developing creativity, for having a more community buildings, for having more community voices, for offering to young people the possibility for acting, for continuing to transform public spaces, for mixing with cultural activities, for artistic activities, urban agriculture actions, etc., etc. The important with the 50-minute city in this idea of complexity is to mix the different ways. For example, open the school during the weekend. Okay. Transform the streets for mini parks. Okay. After that, to propose the participatory budget. The participatory budget, this is a collective voice because people could propose, submit projects with the popular elections. And the winner projects will be funded or be executed. And this is the concrete transformation of the city by the voices of people in a constructive way, in a creative way for transforming. We have created in Paris the contest Beautify My District. Beautify My District is a great window for hearing local voices, for saying, I wanted to transform in my street the street walk, or I wanted to develop more visualizations, I want to develop street art, I want to develop artistic actions. And we have transformed the relationship between the citizen dwellers and the local governance for hearing the voices of people with Beautify My District and citizen dwellers to have a concrete contact with the local governance for defining a feasible project. And today, this is very concrete, and we have a lot of different transformations with the project, with a great success, because a creative voice is at the same time a voice that has this possibility for doing. This is not only for speaking, but for acting. This is the most important if we want to transform a city.
Yes, because when you bring all those things together and people feel that they have agency in their lives and they are seen and heard and can speak in person in collective spaces, people become energized. I see it all the time. I see, when I see a young person who's had a tough start in their life, when they find role models and they find a community, a tribe to belong, they're illuminated. I see it all the time, and it transforms people's lives because they then want to contribute. They want to share their ideas, and when that happens, I think people are far less likely to take extreme actions, whether that is voting for an extreme political party or getting into trouble, into crime. It is always that's always a kind of cry from the soul that something more wholesome is required, and you can only identify that if you come together and people listen to one another, and then they feel valued. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. So yeah, and I would love to see this happen. And as I have twins, I have two 4-year-old children, and I am already very. I place a great value on local community. I take them out on the dog walk. I take them to speak to all the other adults. I want them to feel belonging and purpose, and I want them to know that they are heard in their local community. And I think that it's really sad when adults lose this. So I think that this is a really important, way of achieving that. So in terms of your role, Carlos, so this whole concept, but on a global scale, it blows my mind. Like where do you sit in terms of, do you liaise with governments? Are you kind of in the middle of all of this?
Yeah, we are very happy, very, very proud of this development with the 50-minute city around the world. I think that the most important point today for us is, on the one hand, when the local governors have embraced this concept for proposing a new roadmap in the urbanism in cities, in fact, is to propose the new local urban plan. The 50-minute city with the local governors has a strong impact, not only by the transformations with the moral capability, more local jobs, cultural activities. We are, of course, we are totally involved for that. But the real transformation is when a local governance, a mayor, or president of metropolis, or president of region, has decided to vote a new local urban plan, a new territorial urban plan, available for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, a strategic plan for transforming radically, not only in the short term, but as well in the midterm and in the long term. And for example, in the city of Paris, this was the case. Anne Hidalgo embraced, of course, this concept in 2019 for transforming after the COVID with the different measures, open the schools on the weekend, the street for kids, to transform the corporate business district in a mixed uses, public spaces for moral capability, etc. But don't forget that Anne Hidalgo has voted in May 2023 the new bioclimate local urban plan for the city of Paris. This is a big picture for the next at least 10 or 15 years for continuing this transformation. This is a great, great point, because this is no more to transform streets, to transform public spaces, or to transform local services. This is a way for transform a whole city with a strategic plan implemented in the different areas. This was the case, for example, in Scotland. The Scotland Parliament has voted in February 2023 the new strategic framework, the fourth framework, called 20 minutes territory framework for all Scotland. The vote of this framework is a guarantee for implementing in a midterm this 20 minutes territory in all Scotland. I went to Glasgow recently. It was a very nice surprise when I discovered 1 year after this vote, the new guidance urban plan in Scotland for concretely implement this program of the 20 million neighborhood in different cities. And I said that this is possible in all cities, in all territory. This is just a need of a political will. In Australia, Melbourne, this is the same thing. The Melbourne city and the Victoria State both have voted each one this strategic program. And today we have created with the International Organization of Mayors, C40 cities, the most important global network of metropolises for fighting against climate change. UCLG, United Cities and Local Governors, the oldest organization of mayors. UN Habitat, United Nations in charge of cities, and my team, the Global Observatory of Sustainable Proximities, for creating a place, a worldwide place for federating, for gathering the different cities, mayors, local governors, in order to exchange the best practices, to foster more and more local governors for embracing this concept, and as well to develop more tools for hearing people, for hearing voices, for fostering to create more community buildings, more collective voices, given that we need the involvement of the citizen participations for having a success in this way. For that, we need to create more indicators for showing people that we have in a good way for increasing the quality of life. We need to switch on the comprehension of the quality of life to integrate that the quality of life is no more to continue to accumulate material resources, that the quality of life is to have more social interactions, to have more culture, more higher education, more collective relationships. This is important. And for that, we need to create this new high-quality societal life index. This is the same question with the countries. The question is no more to continue to accumulate with the GDP index, the economical performance, but to give to citizen dwellers a human livability index, the real capability for living, not as a number producers of materials, so in the economical performance, but this complete human with the ecological, economical, social interactions. And I am very happy because we are one of the contributors today in this way, in this global movement. It's not really easier because, unfortunately, we have been living today in a world with more and more radical alt-right forces. We could observe in Europe, in Americas, the emergence more and more important of the racism, populism, exclusion. But this humanistic way is a humanistic way for this low level, the level of cities, different of the level of countries. And I hope that with this transformation in cities, maybe we will contribute to change the mindset for having more open-minded people, more otherness, more friendship relations.
I hope so, and I believe so. Yeah, I really do. And because this is not because I saw opposition from people in my country to this concept, and I couldn't understand, this kind of inflated idea that we'll be trapped. They want to trap us in, and it's like no. I've read your book, and there is no mention of any perimeter fences or this is that's preposterous. You know, it's a very alarmist. But when you follow the trail and you look at where that seed is planted, it's exactly what you just mentioned. It's the people who have vested interests in economic growth above everything, and
Yes.
they're the people that very very cleverly plant that fear, you know, start that fear. And you know, this, so am I right? I'm right in thinking this is not about anything like that. This is about strengthening local communities, lowering emissions, raising happiness and life quality. But it's not saying that we can never travel again or we can never, you know, go to another city. That's crazy to think that, surely.
Yeah, yes, you're totally, totally right. I think that we need to continue to insist with with optimism, in order to develop this happiness way. I think that one of the uh, relevant difficulties today is to discuss with inhabitants, citizen dwellers, neighbors, when we wanted to propose a quality of life based on just happiness. In the modern cities today, we have lost the idea of this happy humanity or happy citizens or happy people. Why? Unfortunately, in the modern social fabric, the main orientation was the economical performance. We have developed this work style based on the one hand, mass production, a mass consumption. And one of the target of the life for a lot of people was to work strongly for having money, for access to this mass consumption, for buying unuseful things. We have a lot of unuseful things considered as necessary. This was one of the genius of marketing said. The essence of the marketing is to contribute to produce a lot of unuseful things that are becoming the necessary things.
Mm-hmm.
And we have totally developed an cumulative mindset. I said one of the first element in this way was to be owner of a car. This economy based essentially in owners. This is my car. This is my home. This is my phone. This is my TV. This is my was at the same time the opposite to we. This is not this is not more a narrative in a collective way. This is a narrative in a individual way. We, as term, doesn't exist. It was the most relevant point. And after that, unfortunately, the development of this were polluted by myself, black, myself, white, but black and white are opposed. And the racial segregation, the religious the segregations, the social categories crossed by by this kind of belong. I am in this religion. I oppose to the other people that in other religion. I went recently to Belfast, and today in the 21st century, even if the peace agreement was signed 30 years ago, we could observe still now the consequences of this confrontation between the kind of community separated by this religion, Christians, Protestants. And we need today to develop a collective effort for transforming in an individual way our mindset in a more collective way. But in a collective way, not necessarily homogeneous way, in a collective way where we could accept a lot of differences of religion, skin, point of view. I think that this is the real challenge today, to create the collective voices and to accept the differences in this collective voice in a peaceful way, in a quiet way, for eliminating violence, hate. And our cities, in my opinion, are the best places for working in this way, because cities are the places for having a stronger proximity. We are the possibility for discussing with a lot of different people on the streets, with the neighborhood, with the intergenerational people, with the women, men, etc. I think that cities, by this physical presence, physical interactions, are the places where we could develop this kindness, this otherness. But we need for that a leadership. We need to identify voices with this capability for generating trust, or opening this way in order to contribute to transform our individual mindset in a more collective mindset. The 50-minute city, the polycentric proximity, has in the DNA this way to kindness, otherness, in a collective way with the individual differences, with the important social acceptability, to develop a new economic model, no more based in the economical performance, but in the added value, in the social added value, to create infrastructures not only for businesses, but for be used as social infrastructures, to create services for nourishing a mindset, cultural activities, educational activities, for fostering people to speak in different languages, no more in one languages, because this is one of the sources of the more otherness, to understand people with the different accents, with the different origins. This is important for saying we are in a collective way, even if we could be different. We need to regenerate our humanity by this crisscross way, in a ecological, social, and economical positive impact for each one of us.
Yes, and you make me think of two things there, which one is something that George Monbiot, the writer, said. He said that what we need is to move towards private sufficiency, but public luxury. So, instead of people boxed in tiny flats and somebody else in a mansion down the road with lots of land, we need to see big grand parks that everybody can access with, where we much like you said about the school. I think that's a beautiful idea. And that also made me think of a paper written by Professor Tim Jackson and Amy Isham. And it's about flow states and about if we can begin to return prominence to activities of flow, so physical intimacy, arts, crafts, people coming, walks together, people playing together, sports, things that don't require material consumption and production, but about returning the value to those interactions and coming together. Then I think you speak of that there very, very well. And I think that if we can implement that, then we will start to see an alleviation of the mental health crisis, and people will no longer feel so alone.
No. One of the point of public spaces for social interaction is the randomized effect. The name was the return on collisions. People, when have the possibility for being in an open public space, we could increase the rate of physical interactions. And the effect of the randomized physical interactions offer a possibility for transforming physical interactions in a social interactions, for generating a friendship, for generating the new relationship. The public space is very important because this is one of the places when we could mix a lot of different people with the origin totally different in all kinds of origins, and to generate this social interaction. One of the difficulties today, for example, is the majority of couples have today as the starting point in a relations social networks. The different apps, Tinder and others, are the most used. But in general, for a long time, the public spaces, the randomized meetings, were a real possibility for regenerating this different quality of meetings without an homogeneous category, social category for people. Today, with the social networks, the users could define his model. I am white. I want a girl white. I am white collar. I need an executive woman. I am 35. I want 35. We could define the pattern.
Yeah.
And this pattern is a permanence, an activity for finding and to propose the person in this pattern. This is not the case in the public space. When you have the randomized meeting in the public space, I am in a public space. I am just for working, just for observing. And we had this possibility for generating for the human behaviors a kind of attractiveness. And this is so important today. And for that, we need to continue to insist on the importance of proximity with the more public space. When people have used a car, this is impossible to generate physical interaction, a social interaction in a car. If I have no more cars, I have a well-capable way, I will increase my rate of randomized physical interaction for transforming in a social or cultural interactions or more. The name of that is the ROC, return on collisions. We have a collision. You are here. What is your name? Or do you want to drink? This interaction is a source for creativity.
Yeah. It's a beautiful thing. I had it in art college, I had it at university, I had it in sports clubs. I had, I've been fortunate to have a lot of that in my life, and I attribute a lot of my happiness today to that belonging. And I've always had these good physical interactive networks, and it's something I want my children to place great value on too. But let's hope with your work that we can start to see that for many more people. Well, this has been a joy, Carlos, and I've kept you long enough.
Great pleasure.
Yes, thank you very much, and keep up your important work. It's very inspiring, and I'm constantly telling people and pushing the agenda myself now, so I hope that I can play some small part in that.
Thank you so much, Ben. Thank you for your kindness. Thank you for the quality of your question and reflections. Very, very interesting. Thank you, Ben.
The pleasure's all mine. Take care. Big thank you to Professor Carlos Moreno for ducking out of a heavy schedule, including the Olympic Games in Paris, to have a chat with me for this show. It's a real honour. I must admit, when I started doing this, which was for the CALM campaign, Campaign Against Living Miserably, a charity here in the UK dealing with male mental health and suicide prevention, I never imagined that it would extend to, interviewing people with neighbourhoods and sort of city planners and these, people who are really driving society in their various ways. But that's what it is. That's what's going on, and it's I love it. It gives me a real kick, a real buzz. I learn something from every guest I have, be it the 10-year-old Disney cartoon pirate that I had on the show in its early days, right through to people like Carlos who are world renowned. I love it. I see value in every person that I talk to, and it's a real pleasure. So if you want to help me on that, please do leave a little review, a rating, subscription. There's a little bit that I wanted to touch upon in the 15-Minute City book, which is really lovely, and it's a thing called Sumak Kause, and it's teachings of the Autochtone people, which is I believe in the Andes, and it's a kind of way of being. It's a holistic way of living, which brings into balance all of the following things: balance, harmony, creativity, serenity, reciprocity, cooperative work, socio-political organisation, and ancestral knowledge. I would add to that nature. Maybe that falls under one of those categories, but it's a beautiful concept, and there's lots of things like that in this book, and it's things like that really kind of make me wonder about the conspiracies, bashing on this idea of a 15-minute city. I find it strange, and I get it, because it's a major change. It's a big upheaval of the way of doing things that we are used to now. But we know by now that the way we're doing things are fucking up this planet and leaving us in a horribly precarious position. Flirting with ecological collapse, which would just screw everything, society and the lot. And I don't know about you, but I don't mind the life I have. Do you know what I mean? I like this sort of freedom to create and not just be surviving and everything else. And I think that pioneering models of redesigning cities and things like this are going to be really important. And it is, in an ideal world where the climate's fine and everything's okay, then maybe we wouldn't look at this. But even on a simple day-to-day level, those commutes and the lack of public transport infrastructure and 2 cars per house and clogged up streets and all that, we can't go on down this road, can we? On a mental health basis, on an environmental basis, and creativity is certainly getting stiffed, because people are, bundled into low-income areas and kept separate from everyone else, and there's violence and all sorts, and there's a lot of ills out there, and I do think it takes some big ideas and some big changes to sort of get us back to a place where more people can be at the forefront of urban and government planning and the system and everything else. Anyway, it's just my thoughts. I'm never one to come to with these, because I'm not a good debater. I listen to everyone. I try to find my aggregate opinion somewhere in the middle of it, and I'm not one for a major argument. So, but there we go. It seems kind of counterintuitive to me to read a book so good and talk to a man so warm and driven and smart, to then throw these wild ideas of New World Order and all this stuff. It just didn't. No, it just jarred. It didn't seem to add up to me. But there you go. Just me. Not want to, I don't want to start bringing conspiracy debates on this show. It's not where I want to go with it. This is all for the creativity. So whatever you think of all that stuff, I don't think you could argue with the values of what Carlos is talking about. So there you have it. Big thank you to the founding sponsor of the show, illustrationx.com, and the Ukrainian Institute, who you can support, and I hope you will try to support right now. They need it. Thank you. Thank you for recent orders of the Creative Condition book. It's out now at bentalentwriter.com/shop, as is the Anatomy of Creativity map. Get your hands on the copy now. It's limited time deal, the bundle. So thanks for the orders so far, and get on that. Thank you to Dirty Freud for the music for the show, as ever. That's about it from me. Nice one, guys. I'll see you next week. Rate, review, subscribe, help me out. Cheers. Nice one. Have a good one. Bye-bye. Ta-ra.